What would happen if they re-signed Mitch Marner?
Tell you what, I mean, it's an interesting market because there's a lot of backers. Like it's a civil war on a daily basis, and this has been brewing for years.
And Marner, what the fuck are you doing, my guy? What are you doing? For a
Okay,
guy who is trying to erase the narrative around him heading into free agency this summer, where he's trying to make some money, for that guy to come out and look as bad as he did last night and as inexcusable, the spinny backhand pass, failing to cover the back door, failing to back check, and just like, oh my God, there are no excuses, and it is unbelievable that we are right back here to square one.
1-2-3 Utah, man. We talked about the Battle of Alberta a few years ago in that overtime where you could see Johnny Gaudreau start to skate back to America, like right, like
Yeah.
like that. You could see in that moment, you're like, he is gone. He is leaving that team. That and that was more of like a he's dumping them, but
Yeah.
this
I
one
mean,
the moment when it's 2-0 and on an easy breakout where all you're facing is somebody is going to hit you and you pull up and send a blind backhand kind of attempted breakout pass to Gus Forsling. It was Steve Dangle flipped out about we're going to show one clip about it, but he had like 9 that I thought were all correct where one of them he was saying like when have you seen a Lightning player do that? When have you seen a Stars player do that? When have you seen anybody who means business do that? And the stakes are so high, and I honestly think that boiled down to Mitch Marner in a kind of must-win game in the second round didn't want to get hit.
yeah.
Inexcusable.
Yeah. I mean, you mentioned the Johnny Gaudreau thing. The Johnny Gaudreau thing had like kind of quit on his team in the final seconds there. I think that Mitch Marner would have helped his team by quitting on them. That's how bad he was. Like if he went out there and did nothing, it would have been better than what he did. And that to me is insane. That to me is crazy. It's why I wouldn't give him $1. I think he's a good player. I wouldn't give him a fucking dollar in free agency. I really wouldn't. Because what are you paying for? You're paying for games 1 through 82, but what does it matter when things get tough in the playoffs and that guy has no interest in being part of a winning product in the playoffs? It's unbelievable. It's truly
I
unbelievable. I hate dumping on guys like this, but he deserves every fucking shred of getting cooked that he's going to get from now until free agency.
I
Unless
think
of course, by some means he comes out and has 2 great games to end this series and pushes them through, then I will eat my words. Everybody else should eat theirs too. But until then, I wouldn't give that guy $1.
so I think he is a phenomenal player, and I think that he deserves a massive contract. But here's what he is: different style, but he's the new Phil Kessel, where he's such a good player. But do you want that guy on your books? Because you have to pay him for how amazing he is. Yet, the only way you win with that guy is if you have like 3 other players who are as good or better because they're going to have the intangibles that he seemingly lacks. Like that was a big, big, big moment. And I think that people overreact to Mitch Marner sometimes, but there's no overreacting to that. Let's see, though, if there could be by watching Steve Dangle's reaction to it.
Mitch, what was that? Here come the Panthers off a spinny backhand pass, and they score. Mitch, what on earth are you friggin' doing? What was going through your head when you did that? What is your major malfunction? What made you think that was the move? The Panthers have Jesper friggin' Boquist up on their top line tonight, and he just buried you clowns. 3-0 in your own barn halfway through a game 5? You guys suck!
Couple of super chats from Schwa, Stu Skinner stonk up, thank you very much. And from Clubbers, why Leafs fan upset, scored as many goals as Oil. Okay, when Steve says, and they score, that's that moment where like you see a loved one cry, you know? And you're like, the feeling that, like, I'm not feeling what you're feeling, but Jesus, do I want to die for you right now because that's so miserable, whatever is going on with you. Like, poor Steve Dangle in that moment. And I will always say poor Steve Dangle. I know people like they watch him to laugh at him. At some point last night in the third period, there were more people watching Dangle on his stream, seriously, than there were people watching the Leafs at the arena because everybody left. And I know that everybody's watching to see him melt down. But in that moment, he's actually exasperated and he's actually hurt, and we would think he can't be hurt anymore.
Yeah, and like that honestly did not feel performative, which is crazy to say. That guy, I love Steve. I love several Toronto Maple Leafs fans. I have a lot of respect for a lot of Maple Leafs fans in my life. I feel bad saying like I don't want anything good to ever happen to them, but it's who I am. It's how my hockey fandom is shaped. I don't want anything good to happen to them. And I love Steve, and Steve is so good at crashing out that why would I want anything good to happen to him? Why would I want that not to be fed to me on a silver platter? It's so good. He is unbelievable. I do want to push back on the Phil Kessel thing because I feel like you were a little disrespectful to Phil Kessel there. Phil Kessel did show up in the playoffs, and you made the point that like he wasn't the guy. He was never really like the 1A or whatever. That's fine. The problem here is that Mitch Marner is going to demand to be paid like a 1. And if
which
you're
is what Phil
demanding
Kessel was.
How much was Phil making?
He got a huge deal on his second. The reason the Bruins traded him was they were like, he wasn't the highest paid guy in the league, but they didn't want to pay him top dollar. And he went and he got top dollar in, I'd have to look it up, but he was a big money player.
But ultimately, he went on and earned it. And I guess like Mitch Marner will have the opportunity to do that after he gets paid, probably somewhere else. Maybe he does it. And if so, I'll be happy for him. I'll be glad for him. But if I'm a team right now, I'm not giving that guy. I've really not seen a shred of anything that would make me feel confident that he's going to show up when it matters most. And that's why I wouldn't give him anything.
Phil Kessel went from making... he got 5.4 a year in Toronto, and then 8 a year after that. Once he got traded to Pittsburgh,
after he got traded to Pittsburgh, he earned the 8 a year. That's kind of how it worked. He earned that 8.
He earned that 8, but he was a middle six player, which back then $8 million was huge money. That's like Patrice Bergeron money.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm saying. Like he's going to make top dollar on his team or close to it, and you need, like I said, like maybe even 2 or 3 guys who are better than him. And that's what happened with Pittsburgh. Phil Kessel wasn't a top 4 player on that team, and that's absolutely fine. But how often is that going to actually happen? This is a guy who was traded, I believe, with money retained. Like, do we ask before he even signs his contract? At some point, does whoever signs Mitch Marner retain money when they eventually trade him? This feels like, I can't remember a free agent in any sport where when they sign their deal, I mean, Deshaun Watson, maybe, but there are other questions there. But where you're like, man, there's a real big, oh boy, with this contract. Sort of JD Drew a little bit, but that was because people were still kind of unsure as to whether he was a particularly great player. This is going to be really unique, but I'm telling you, man, he's going to still get absolutely paid. And he does deserve a massive contract. That's what sucks. That's what, and like, I almost feel for him where it's kind of like, remember when PK Subban shoved it up Bergevin's ass and had the Norris winning year? And it went from, okay, now instead of paying me, I'm not going to remember what the cap was like back then, but like, instead of paying me this much, now you got to pay me way more. And as soon as I sign that deal, my contract becomes, quote unquote, a problem. I feel like that's what Mitch Marner is going to be. And Maybe getting him out of Toronto will make the story subside a little bit. But like, let's say I said 1-2-3 Utah, which is the 1-2-3 Cancun thing. Let's say he goes to Utah. Other guys can be the dog there. And he's just the guy with the huge paycheck who's going to score 1 million goals and be a great defensive player. But he ain't no alpha, man. I'll tell you that. And not everyone has to be an alpha, but it gets complicated when the highest paid player isn't an alpha.
Yeah, and it gets complicated. Like William Nylander is the only alpha that the Maple Leafs seem to have on their core four. Like you can say John Tavares has been good, but like it feels like William Nylander is the only alpha in that core four. And then like maybe Matty Nice. Like Matty Nice has more alpha to him than Matthews and Marner. And like if we're dissecting the Marner of it all, like he's got one shot on goal in his last 3 games. One shot on goal in his last 3 games. And then going back to what happened earlier this year when the Leafs tried to explore the trade for him and Rantanen, the stat that was tweeted out by Maple Glazed on Twitter, just an unbelievable stat. Mikko Rantanen has 8 goals in his last 6 playoff games. Mitch Marner has 7 playoff goals over the course of his 6-year contract. That, talk about alpha comparison. Mikko Rantanen is as alpha as it gets. Mitch Marner is as far at the other end of the spectrum as it gets. When games get tough and when shit gets nasty, he becomes worse. Like he becomes worse the more nasty it gets. And Mikko Rantanen becomes better. It's crazy.
Okay, let's bring in our buddy, the great Nick Alberga. Golden Muzzy, where is he? Hey, buddy, how you doing?
I'm hanging in there, boys. How are you on this Thursday?
Better than you. Better than you. That is for damn sure.
It feels like Groundhog Day, guys. It feels like Groundhog Day, where it's like I always answer the bell as a Leafs media member, answer the bell and trying to respond after whatever the effort was the night before. But yeah, mind-boggling, bewilderment, like list your best adjective as to what transpired on Wednesday night, eh?
What would happen if they re-signed Mitch Marner?
Tell you what, I mean, it's an interesting market because there's a lot of backers. Like it's a civil war on a daily basis, and this has been brewing for years. There's a lot of backers in Mitch Marner. So one side of the fan base would be very, very fun. And, you know, the calculator community, the numbers people are big fans, and I get it. He's an unbelievable regular season player, just not just first career 100-point season. But then there's the other side, like myself, where it's like, that's great. And I appreciate what Mitch Marner brings to the table. I think he's a special player. He's an all-star, bona fide star. But I want dogs. Like I want alphas. I want guys like Patrice Bergeron who are going to drag you into the fight. And, you know, we had this conversation yesterday doing the show. It's like all this conversation about Auston Matthews. And again, I'm giving him, you know, the benefit of the doubt. But Patrice Bergeron was dead to rights that one year. Like they almost pronounced him dead after one of the games, and he still played through it. So it's hard to give guys a pass this time of year. I think you have to put up or shut up. And unfortunately, from the Marner standpoint specifically, he can't find a way to get the job done. And that's what concerns me. It's like if you bring him back, you know how it looks in the playoffs, unfortunately.
Yeah, and it's harder. It's harder to I think that you can have guys like Mitch Marner on a winning playoff team, but you have to have the other guys around them. And it's a lot harder to do that when you're paying the Mitch Marner type player $13 million and he's the highest paid player on the roster and he's the one disappearing when the games get the toughest. Like that to me is the problem. If Mitch Marner wants to take a pay cut and stay with the Leafs and get like $8 million a year, then God bless him. The Leafs will probably be in a pretty good spot. But that's not going to happen. So that's my
exactly it. He's coming off 10.9 AAV. If he wants to sign that deal where it's like $8 million, it's just not going to happen. I think you'd be an idiot not to accept that. It's more so this guy legitimately is eyeing Rantanen money. Like think about that. You guys just laid out the stats: 8 goals in the last 6 games. Front runner right now for the Conn Smythe Trophy. He's already won a Stanley Cup. And again, all the power to you to request as much money as you want. He wants more than Auston Matthews. And I think there's got to be a precedence when it comes to the salary cap as well. Part of the reason, in my opinion, at least, Mikko Rantanen is no longer a Colorado Avalanche. They didn't want to pay him more than Nathan MacKinnon. So there's a lot of moving parts to it, but I think the conversation for me on Marner stops when you mention the name Mikko Rantanen. They're just not the same guy. I know who I'd want.
Where do you think would be a good landing spot for him? We say
So,
Utah or
I say
Carolina.
Pittsburgh.
Gross.
Yeah,
I hate that.
I like how you snarled there. It's because Kyle Dubas. I personally, this is my opinion. There's a reason why Carolina's been connected to Mitch Marner for like 3 years now. There's a reason why they sniffed around at the deadline. I think at the very least, the Canes will be aggressive. They'll make an offer. We saw that with Gensel last year. We saw that this year with Mikko Rantanen. So they're probably like number one on my list. I think Chicago will be in that conversation. You have to get sort of somebody to go with Connor Bedard. You got to start building that roster. And I honestly feel like in this situation, it could come to the highest bidder. Like knowing what I know about the Marner camp, they're going to chase the bag. And if it comes to a situation where you get a San Jose, John Tavares type request and contract, then I think he would accept it, quite honestly.
We all silly like the mayor.